we're here to talk about
Great.
music. We're here to talk about mental health. We're here to talk about a few things that I won't be speaking in a foreign language to you when we're talking about, which is cool. So, first of all, just give us a little bit of an intro to who is Dr. Beau.
Dr. Beau is international. I call myself a sonic engineer and versatile artist. I am, for those that's wondering or have some type of trust issues with doctor, I'm not an MD pursued doctor right now. I do have a higher education, but it isn't for necessarily medicine, doctor. It's more of in sonic therapy. I believe that mental health and sonic therapy is something that can heal people. Music heals people, even if you're in a mood. It transfers your energy, or it may balance your energy to a different sort of powerful effect to your emotions.
Yeah,
So that is definitely my mission: mental health and music.
yeah,
It's unfortunate. A lot of times people may deal with mental health in the music industry without necessarily having the outlet, the resources, or the persons around them to support them. So I find starting the conversation and destigmatizing where it starts will help.
yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And as a person who the first thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a musician. I watched. Have you ever seen the movie Big, the Tom Hanks one, where they play on the giant keyboard and they're standing
Yeah,
in the shop?
of course.
From the point of seeing that at 6 years old, I was like, I want to play music. So yeah, music was my first love well before before video games, before physical health, before mental health. So I can totally get on board with that. What I'd like to do is basically we'll go through sort of your origin story in terms of music, and we'll go through your origin story in terms of mental health, and then we'll see how those two weave together. So if you start us off with kind of where your interest in music developed from.
Interest in music, it started from the church. So my parents, background of my parents, half Scottish, British, and half West Caribbean. So migration to America, it creates different cultural values or assimilations
Yeah,
in America. So the Pentecostal church is definitely Baptist church, Pentecostal, those sort of religions are very music based, very praise and worship based. So my music definitely started there as an origin, like literally growing up in the church and hearing music every day. Eventually the desire to like touch an instrument, learn how it is, learn how you can praise something that creates an emotion inside of you, that creates a different mood, that sets your mentality in a different place.
yeah. What was the first instrument you went for?
Drums. Besides
Drums.
vocals, I've been singing. I feel like I've been singing ever since I popped out, but drums.
Did he just hit a high C? It's like that scream. It's perfectly in pitch. So yeah, you went for drums, and what age was that?
I'll say about 9. I was finally allowed to be on a drum set.
Okay. And did you stick at drums for a little while, or when was it that you moved into the space of kind of sonic craftsmanship?
Yeah, because when you think about it, like there's so much to go into gospel music. The point of praise and worship is sort of raising someone to an ethereal level. You want
Yeah,
to be closer to God. So to think of everyone in a congregation joining in on a certain frequency to be raised to that level, like sonics are already there in the atmosphere. But it took me realizing not everyone does things appropriately in sound engineering and live sound, in just singing in general, in so many instruments. You can better yourself, you can improve yourself. So I wanted to improve myself. And my goal was to play as many instruments as possible and learn as many things as possible.
Okay, awesome. And what instrument came next after the drums then?
It was drums, piano, bass, and then like acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
all within like from 9 to 15. And then
Okay.
from there is just honing.
Amazing. Did you find that that learning each of those instruments changed the way that you listen to and view music?
Of course. Across from me are my guitars, and like every guitar has its own personality for some people. And depending on the body and model of the guitar, sometimes it even has a specific genre that you would attach it to, like a hollow body. You hear it in jazz, and acoustic, you hear it in folk, you hear it in pop. You know, it's these different personalities attached to instruments that like makes you hear things differently in songs. That's what I really picked up. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I started playing the piano when I was 6, and then I started guitar at 14, and then drums at 21. And then I think and I did my training to be a sound engineer at 23, 24. And I found that the way, so basically when I was 6 in 1988. So just after that, kind of the early 90s piano-based house music was absolutely everywhere. So, you know, like Brothers and Sisters, dun, 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 you know, it's like, so I was like looking for, and Robert Miles' Children kind of came out shortly after that, you know, it's like, so these are all, the piano-based house music was a huge thing at the time. And that was kind of what my attention drew towards because of that. And then when I started playing guitar at 14, that was around about the time that like Oasis had just released their second album, you know. So there was then it was my attention was going towards that. And then once the drums came in, it's like now I'm following the drum beats. Now what I was finding was that it was increasing my ability to understand the music, but it was changing what music I would like, because if the piano wasn't good, like I was analysing the piano and then forgetting the rest of the song. And the same with the guitar. And then becoming a sound engineer, it was like it went from analysing the drum beat to I don't like the reverb they've put on that snare. And it made me, in a way, forget how to enjoy music. I learned how to analyse music, but I'd forgotten how to enjoy it for a good while. And did anything like that happen to you at all, or did it just enhance?
Of course, and that could be a segue also into mental health and how it deals with music production. Because I would only hear music like I would only hear. It's just sounds. It's like, am I hallucinating this, or is this my reality? Like, I'm only hearing songs in my head. It doesn't matter if if I have headphones on or if I have an iPad or that. It doesn't matter what I have on me. It's just music and melodies and just sounds, and like you hear it, you see it, you vision it in some sort of way. And if you speak that vision with others, sometimes they look at you like you're crazy. Like if you're in the club with your friends and you're like, oh man, I don't know about this guy's speakers, but this mix is not hitting right. They'll be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like, you good, mate. Like, who the fuck is the sound engineer here? I'm just asking a question. I just want to meet the guy. You know, it's like you mean it in a good way, but sometimes you overanalyze things in the wrong way, and it could lead to disagreements in some settings, I've found, because people just don't take criticism lightly when it comes to music. It's a very personal and it's a very emotional field and art form in general.
Yes, yeah, 100%. It's like it's having something you've created. I mean, I've got a couple of children myself, so I don't like to directly compare it to children, because I think my children would be a bit upset if I said that my songs are their brothers and sisters. But It is. It's like I'm very defensive, more defensive if someone that I love is picked on. Like, so I'm way more than someone can troll me. But if someone like is trolling someone that I love, then I'm significantly more defensive. And yeah, there is something very personal about it if someone says something about your music. And one of the other things I kind of struggle with is I kind of, when I was in bands and stuff, it was at that time that I had friends that were artists or photographers. And I know obviously you can sit and look at a painting or a photograph for a very long period of time, but you get a very instant, I like this or I don't like this with a photo. And you could look at 56 of a person's photos in the space of a minute. Whereas getting someone to sit down and listen to it and commit to a full minute of a song or 3 minutes of a song, it's like they have to, and they're already kind of talking over 30 seconds in, and you're just like, no, just listen to it. It's like it was hard, like having a person like listen to your music, especially when you're there. It's like I was always so excited to show a person a song, but then when they were listening to it, like if at any point I thought, oh, they're not listening to it properly, or they're not giving it the full attention. Whereas my friends who had who had paintings, like there's a guy called Andy who's he's a graffiti artist called Dead One, and he's absolutely phenomenal. But people would instantly see it and just go, oh, that's sick, like, and straight away love it. And it's like, whereas with music, there's more of an investment. You have to put that time and you have to put that level of attention in order to kind of to get there.
Of course. I mean, there's visual, there's auditory, there's kinesthetic in a way, because sometimes there's choreographed, there's dance to it, there's marketing, then there's business, and then there's a whole back end to music. If it's not just a hobby of like, hey, listen to my song, I just made a song. That's just because I felt like it's not my life, it's not my bread, it's not my, it's different. Yeah. Monty said, I heard marketing and business.
It's weird. As soon as I can't hear those words and not think of him, and especially as soon as those Devon Nash emojis, Mounty fangirls for Devon Nash, big time. But yeah, as soon as I hear marketing and business now, I'm like, I think Mounty. He's nailed it. He's obviously nailed it. If that's what. As soon as, I've tried to do it with mine. As soon as people hear the word mindset, I want them to hear by Dave as like almost like a little silent echo after it. It's like, yeah, it's all about your mindset by Dave. It's like if I get that, I've won. But so let's talk. Well, you said obviously there is a bit of a link into mental health already. Can you talk us through your kind of experience of mental health, and then we'll weave the two together.
My experience with mental health, it deals with shamefully, it deals with like sexism and racism in a way, because like people don't believe certain identities because of prejudices and expectations already put on them socially. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of trauma behind mental health in general, and for certain cultures, for example, the multicultures that I grew up in, it wasn't easy to speak about mental health. It wasn't easy. Some people come home to dinner on the table, two parents there, siblings, love, warmth, etc. How was your day? How are you doing? That simple difference in someone's life could change their whole life to their adulthood. When you don't have that in your home, it pulls at your mental health. It strains you. It creates some sort of hostility, even in environments that you visit, whether it be work or school. So growing up in between certain environments and cultures definitely led my mental health to a horrific place. I can't get into details because it's a very trigger warning story. So I wouldn't want to like put any, details into a, shitty past. You feel me? But
Yeah. I mean, if you do want to, it is okay. This entire channel is a rolling content warning, and we do allow for everyone to get into. Basically, we're trying to normalize the conversation around mental health, and our approach to normalizing conversation around mental health is you talk about your mental health. And it's I've taken the kind of onus on the fact that I understand that there may be things talked about within the show and even within that may be triggering to people within the community, and my community do know that, because ultimately I think you've either got the choice of you keep things on a surface level to protect the community that's there, but at the same time, by doing that, we often get people who would come straight into chat and immediately open up. That person then, I don't kind of really believe in saying to that person then, can you go back and do a content warning, or you shouldn't have said this or whatever, because to me that's adding an additional layer of shame onto a person that's already struggling to open up. So I have a little bit of a different approach to it than most channels, which is why when people say about mental health safe spaces, I describe mine as a mental health challenging space. But it's entirely up to you.
I feel that. I'm going to have to put that on my about me. Yoinks.
You go for it.
I feel that. Not necessarily speaking about that with someone, creating safety in a space, but not necessarily shielding people from the truth of the environment. But in the depths of mental health, hey, if you need a therapist, if you feel like your mindset isn't in the best place. If you feel like whatever you may be going through, whether it be work or personal or romantic relationship, go to a therapist, go to a doctor, get a check-in. But personally, from the reason why I even took on the musical title of doctor is because personally, I have not had a healthy or positive or any way appropriate relationship with the medical field and my medical history of mental health or physical health and conditions. So one day things aren't going so well. And I tell my therapist how I feel, thinking I could trust the psychologist. Things are safe here.
Yeah.
But then I broke rule number 1, right? If you've ever been to a psychologist, the rules are if you say anything in a harming way towards yourself, anyone or etc., we have to bring the authorities in.
Yeah.
So that's happened at least 5 times for me, more or less, between my high school and junior high years. So pretty young of my adulthood, pretty within my adolescence, I dealt with hospitalizations with mental health and seeing how they handle people down from insurance to sad to say, down to race, down to if they take a certain pill or if they act a certain way, how they seclude them and isolate them. I couldn't believe some things that I read about only happened in the 1930s and 50s still abided in the early 2000s for mental health. This is how you seriously fucking still take care of people. We can do better. These are 7-year-olds and 10-year-olds. These are kids. If this is how we treat our kids with mental health, how the fuck will it be in my adulthood? So eventually, leading up to that, I kind of went off medication. For certain people, it works for them with mental health. For other people, their health and medication doesn't work for them. It just made my physical condition worse. So I had to stop. and I had to find more holistic ways to take care of myself. And through that, I learned more about art therapy. I learned more about, say, sound therapy and music and the release and rebalancing your energy through frequencies. So between that, I suppose that really tied together how mental health and music production and compositions can lead someone to releasing negative energy or releasing any sort of mental imbalance in their head and in their mind, to rebalancing themselves.
Awesome. So talk us through kind of how you came across that and how you use that sonic therapy. Is sonic therapy the correct term?
Yeah, I consider myself a sonic engineer rather than it's audio engineering to a next level.
Yeah.
Because the knowledge and the power of certain frequencies in your consciousness, it can really change your entire mood, your entire emotions. It's really what I'm studying and going for into specializing. I really believe it can change the world.
Yeah, I also think so as well. Would you say that kind of your background in praise and worship, like understanding that the purpose of using that is to elevate a state, is to kind of create a completely different emotional state than what the person was in before? Does that play sort of a backbone in what you do?
In a way, definitely. In a way, definitely, because I know for certain people their identities aren't accepted in religion the same way as they may be accepted outside of the world. So to create music for everyone without it limiting to being praised in a certain environment, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think Metafish said something earlier. It's like, I think it was Kirtan, that within different religions, or even just even certain kind of sociological situations, not even religious situations, music has been used as a way to transform a person's state since forever. It's been used to kind of bring people into harmony or bring people into the same rhythmical space or the same sonic space, and it's not, I don't think it is. It's definitely not just linked to any one particular religion or even lack of religion. But I believe that the principle that music can do that is what underpins each and every one of those things.
Yeah, it is. And as Nipper 1111 is saying, does anyone know the science behind why your favorite hype songs almost always amp you up? That goes back to mental health. If you're feeling the way and you're like, oh man, I don't got my serotonin ain't doing so well. I wish I just had a little bit of boost of dopamine. You just need something, some adrenaline in your system real quick. Don't need any caffeine. You don't need to go for a run. You listen to your favorite song and all of a sudden, you're feeling a little bit chipper, Yeah. you're feeling amped up for once. And that's not just within, I suppose, our psychology of like repetition. And like, if you hear something enough times, you start to love it, or if you love it enough times, you always go back to it. It's supposed to boost us up. It's a reason why people create playlists. It's a reason why people go back to their favorite pastime. It's the reason why you play a video game, because man, those 20, 40 minutes could really just boost you up.
Yeah, totally. In the work I do, it's something that's called an anchor. An anchor is basically something that causes an immediate link back to a particular memory. So smells are often anchors without people realizing it. If someone walks past with your ex's aftershave on or your ex's perfume on, it's either a good day or a bad day, depending on whether that was a good or a bad ex. Like certain smells that take you back to childhood, like grandma's cooking or like cookies or whatever it might be. They're a big one. Certain outfits can do it, but songs, generally speaking, take us back to that particularly hyped up state or a hyped up moment when that song was used. A little bit Zoolander-y, funny, because Zoolander came up on the other day, because I don't know how it came up, because we were talking about the song "Relax." Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You know, it's about the fact, something called reciprocal inhibition. No, oh my God, paradoxical intent. There we go. That's what it's called. Reciprocal inhibition is not even a thing. Paradoxical intent is when you really, really want something, you get the opposite. So, like, basically, if you really, really want to sleep and you're like, I just need to get to sleep, I've got to get to sleep, I need to get to sleep, it keeps you awake. Whereas if you're like, I just want to stay awake through this movie, I just want to stay awake, you know, you're out like a light. And the same thing is actually, the same thing is actually true in sex, and that was what Frankie Goes to Hollywood was about. Is like, you know, relax, don't do it when you want to come. It's like, if you're just thinking, I need to come, it's like, that's gonna hold you back. So if anyone wants to last longer, here's the tip of the episode, right? If anyone wants to last longer in the sack, just tell yourself, I just really need to finish as soon as humanly possible. And then that led on to Zoolander, because the song "Relax" was used as an anchor or a trigger or whatever you want to call it. It was used as an anchor for Zoolander. But when he heard that song, it would switch him into that psychological state. It's a little bit obviously an exaggerated version, but they are things that we can totally and utterly create as well. Like I've taught people how to create anchors. Like, you basically build up a memory into their mind, and then you have a physical action. Like, the ones that I use a lot is putting your fingers together like that. I've not got any anchors on this hand, but I've got ones on this hand, which is why I'm not using it, because it switched me into that state. And yeah, it's like that songs can certainly do that as well. When you hear a certain song, like it takes you back to certain times, which can be now weirdly, that I'm getting older, you know, I'm like nearly 40. I heard a song the other day that took me back to a time that would have normally made me happy, but in a weird way made me kind of strangely nostalgic but melancholic with it as well, because it was about a time. It was a live song, a live recording of a song by a band called Kids in Glass Houses that I'd been to that gig with my friends when we were younger and things were easier, and at that point it made me miss that time in my life. So hearing that song, which would normally have me like amped up, actually had a completely different effect because of the association of the emotion.
Associations, man. Sound associations are very, very, very important. It's also what I relate to when I tutor someone and do like musical mentorships. Sound associations. If you remember something and you relate to it, it's easier for you to be in tune for it. It's easier for you to teach yourself about it. So I wonder if you hear a sound that's related to you feeling a certain way or feeling a better or brighter emotion, can you play that sound then back when you're not feeling as well? If you're having a depressed day and you just go to your, man, this is my upper mood sound. This is my mellow mood sound. I'm having an insomniac night. I need to go to my ambient sounds. Those certain sonics you're pulling from that to therapeutically put you into a state of ease, put you into a state of ecstasy, put you into whatever state you need. Like that's really what I would love to do for music, because I feel like people's mental health, sometimes at the end of the day, you need some ambience, you need a mood booster because your day wasn't as great as it should have been. So
yeah,
lovely. It's a lovely thing when you can inspire someone, or you can put a song out there that they're like, oh man, I remember the time I first heard that. That was one of the best times of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you use sounds for your own for your own benefit now, like for your own mental health, like positively impacting your own? Because you said obviously this is what you got into this part, the side of it for, is to be able to, I guess, do for you what the medical system couldn't.
I suppose it goes back to the influence of praise and elation and what I forgot the username in the chat. They said about Hindi chants, and also Tibetan, and these different chants that cultures used to use. Obviously, it was a tool of not just communication, but it was a spiritual tool in a way. So there are definitely like folders that I go to or projects that I go to if I'm like, oh man, this day is nothing's working, my brain isn't working, beep boop, signing out, can't compute. Just go to that song. Or like I pick up a certain instrument, I'd love to go to a certain guitar. It's like, I know this is always tuned, I know this always makes me feel good if I just do this song. Or I like to play Since I've Been Loving You by Led Zeppelin. If I play that just right on an acoustic guitar, like it makes me feel like it resonates with me so hard. It's a sort of transcendence in a way. But for my wife, it means something else for her, because that resonates with a certain a mournful memory. Mm-hmm. So those simple things that what means to you could mean to something else. Like those are the things that I go to when I may need something to boost my mental health in music. Those projects that I know will always make me smile or always make me joyous to hear.
Awesome. And how would you kind of help others use that same thing?
I would help others to use that same strategy and not just strategy, just a therapeutic technique in a way of listening to music and sound, but not just being vulnerable with your own creativity, because you may be hearing something in your head, you may be inspired by nature, birds may be chirping, you're going for a hike and you're like, let me record that. And that simple sound could bring you back to the day you were outside. Like when this whole lockdown happened, and shout out to all you countries that are still under it, I had to listen to nature. I had to go back to recordings that it's like, this is what wind sounds like. These are blue jays. Like I had to bring myself back to remembering, okay, this is what a calm mood feels like. This is what outdoors, the sense of it felt like. So that's something I would build with others to not just analyze, but appreciate the sounds of nature and the sonics all around us.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone in the chat, by the way, does have any questions for either me or for Dr. Beau, please at me so I can find them quickly. But I will actually quickly come to Crazy Zombie Pig Boy's question. What a username. Is there a way to avoid feeling irritated further by listening to a happy song when you feel upset? It's an interesting question.
A way to feel irritated.
A way to avoid feeling more irritated, and I think so. Like with this is one of the real things. Yeah, well, yeah. What if you're stuck in the mall? but wear earplugs. But yeah, this is something I find quite fascinating. Really, is that there's two things. Obviously, there's two things that affect the outcome. Really, one is the emotional attachment that you have with the songs, the emotional effect of the song. But then it's how that mixes with the emotional state that you're in right now. And this isn't just with music. This is something I've found really interesting within mindset or within motivation. So motivation tends to work on people who are already kind of sort of maybe motivated. It doesn't tend, like the same motivational quote doesn't tend to get the person who's completely demotivated going, but it can get the person that's pretty much most of the way there that little bit further. You know, like let's look at the gym's reopening in the UK on Monday, and I can't wait to go back. Apart from the fact that I'm on a podcast between 2 and 3 a.m. Bad planning, but. Like, so we'll say, oh, let's go crush Monday, right? If you get a person that's kind of sort of ready to crush Monday, they're like, yeah, this is just the motivation that I needed today. Then if you get a person that's not got out of bed for 2 weeks, they see that, they feel even worse. And it does tend to be that I call it the shrinking middle class of motivation, because you end up with motivation pushes people that if they're in the middle class gets pushed towards, I'm either more motivated or conversely, by the exact same words, I am actually less motivated. And I think music, or even like the concept of toxic positivity, right? A positive person, a person who's really bouncing off the walls positive, to a person that is mostly positive, might be that extra bit of gasoline that gets that person going. But to a person who's really suffering, they're going to be like, get the fuck away from me. It's like, and actually, and by comparison, make them feel worse. And I think music can certainly do that.
That is true. That is true. Like, to Zombie Pig Boy's question, like, certain people have the ability to block out those frequencies. If those frequencies resonate with you being upset and it's happy and go lucky to others, it's learning to, when you hear it, like, you're blocking out those frequencies. Certain people are able to do it. I, on the other hand, have ADHD, so I hear, besides my 10,000 voices and ideas, the other things that's going on in my mind, if that works for you,
yeah.
do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one other thing I'd probably say on that is it's okay. It's like if that song gets your friend amped up and it doesn't work for you, it's okay. It's okay for things to be different. It's we get this with for example, one of my really good friends and who co-presents a mental health show with me. He loves David Goggins, and he loves David Goggins' whole get after it every single day attitude. Like, you've got to be working, you've got to be like, well, whatever he says, like, you know, killing you in a bitch or whatever he says, you know. And it's like, and I'm just like, yeah, that's just too extreme for me, and it doesn't work for me. But it totally and utterly works for him. But also not even between you and somebody else, between you and you. You know, like I said before, that song, that Kids in Glass Houses song, like, would have about a year ago, maybe, like, you know, maybe a year and a half ago, when I probably thought, actually, we could go to a gig if we wanted to. Like, but we've not been able to go to gigs for like a year and a half now.
Yeah.
But like, it may have made me go, oh, that's really good. Actually, I think I might get in touch with my friend Stu and see if we can get some tickets to go and see Jimmy Eat World or something. And whereas now it's like, we had to cancel the Foo Fighters tickets for last year. And it's like, it can have a different impact on you at different points in your life. And it's not that there's a right song. Well, there might be a right song for every occasion, but it's probably a different song. So, and the song that always gets you amped up, if it doesn't work that day, then maybe you need to go and listen to TikTok by Kesha. But which is I used to call it a guilty favorite, a guilty pleasure. Then I stopped being guilty about it.
I mean, to each their own. If it works for you. I
was going to say, I saw the hands on the face, the glasses were off. It's like, he did not just talk about TikTok. Yeah, Zombie Pig Boy, please do expand on the question, and we'll get to it in due time. But yeah, you're not distracting the conversation. Actually, I thought it was a really good question. So
that reminded me of shopping malls. You said that when you put it in that perspective, that automatically reminded me of shopping malls and being in malls and just being around people and the anxiety and the sounds and the why is this playing and so many stores, oh my goodness, auditory, sensory, like that put me in the perspective of like, yeah, like if it upsets you, but it makes someone else feel so good. That's a good one. That was a good point.
It'd be lovely if there was such a thing as a one size fits all approach, wouldn't it? It'd be really handy, but unfortunately, it's just not the case. Do you have that auditory sensory kind of overload?
To an extent, yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I can't listen to certain genres. I can't listen to like certain levels of things. I have to just make sure like. Certain times I just have to make sure my senses are right. Like I learned when I was younger, I had photophobia, they call it. So like even lights itself, too many lights affects me. And I realized that when certain genres of music started coming out and everyone's like playing this constantly. And I'm like, what is this trash? Rubbish, mate. Straight garbage. What is this? You like this? you're blasting this, and I still can't understand it. I mean, to each their own. I try to love I try to talking about change perspectives and balancing your mental health in a different way. I tried to love the production of it. If I didn't like the vocals, if I didn't like the sounds, I try to be like, that's a good snare.
Yes. Did you ever check out grindcore music?
No.
Okay, so grindcore is like very dissonant metal music that is usually like seconds long. Like I'm talking like, in fact, there's probably one that's less than an actual second long. It just literally you just hear a faded in and faded out, and that's an entire song, and people love it. And I'm just like, how? Like, how can you? How? You don't even get a chance to love it. It just kind of comes and goes, and it's. You know,
just hands up. Just I if it works for you. Like,
I think that's the kind of attitude we've got to take. But when it comes to sensory overload, it's like I have type 2 bipolar disorder, and I'm pretty convinced I have ADHD, but I'm getting assessed for it in a couple of months. But basically, I would say that I have really obvious sensory overload when I'm symptomatic, but it's not there at all when I'm not. So it's like when everything else is already on high alert, when like kind of my coping systems are kind of being pushed to the limit, I cannot stand sound, like just like any sound really. I will go, like, if that's the case and I need to go to the supermarket, I will literally put these in with no sound, but just the noise cancelling on them. And it's only something that I've kind of really realised in the last few years. And I think it's probably because earlier in my life, if I was feeling that way, I probably wouldn't ever go anywhere. But like, you know, as like a fully fledged adult and all that stuff now, it's like some days it's like, okay, I feel like that today. The kids are on their way. They need feeding. I've got no other chance to do this. So I've got literally now to go to the shop, and it's like, so I found recently that having a pair of headphones just to block out some of the noise that's around me. Although it does put me on edge in one slight other way, in the fact that obviously then people can creep up on you quite easily. So if someone reaches past you for a loaf of bread, it's like, where the hell did they come from? Because obviously I'd have heard them sneaking up without the headphones, but it does certainly play a role in all that. Clowncore is pretty amazing. I'm gonna have to look up clowncore later on.
That makes me think, like growing up in the city, the East Coast, New York, metropolitan, trains, noise, traffic, horns, dogs, everybody's fuck off this, that, yeah. Everybody's creating just rambunctious catastrophe in that city. And it creates quite a PTSD from that sound when you're away from it. Some people, hey, it's what they live on. It's what they love, the rush. But others, it explains auditory sensory. Like I never knew that every time I was closing my ears for the train, even before it came as a kid, that would grow up to like me wearing headphones every time I went for outside. If I didn't have headphones in public, I knew practically an episode. Like, you know, like I couldn't deal with other people's sound and noise compared to the frequencies that I particularly set for myself.
Mm.
So yeah, that's interesting. Until I'm recently reading more on neurodiversity and ADHD and the spectrum of autism. So it is Autism Acceptance Month, yes, and
it is,
and it's interesting how close these. Correct me if I'm wrong on the saying, the comorbidities.
Morbidity.
Yeah, comorbidity.
Yeah. I hate the word. It's like morbidity. It
like,
sounds
morbid. Like
it sounds so morbid. Yeah, exactly.
Cooperating with my death. Come on, I'm not that fucked up. Like
it's like I've got bipolar disorder and I've also got anxiety. Does someone really need to say that I've got comorbidity between bipolar and anxiety? It's like, But yeah, the art, it is a lot there, and I've been kind of looking at a lot of it recently because there's differences in kind of sound overwhelm between ADHD and between autism. Like it's like, again, when it's with autism, it's an overwhelm, usually, not always, but usually an overwhelming feeling that the sound is wrong in some way, as opposed to like with ADHD, it's more, I don't want to hear this sound right now.
Okay.
But there's a really interesting thing with it in terms of if when we do have an element of control over the sound. So like if it's like a jackhammer going away in the street, and it's just that particular noise, that's someone else has got the control over that jackhammer and when it makes the sound. But if we've got control over the sound, and this is why it's quite interesting as well. Like, there's a lot of people with ADHD that like to be constantly making a sound, but would get irritated by other people that are constantly making a sound, and it's because it's your sound. It's like it doesn't kind of irk you in the same way if you're controlling it. And there's, I'm still doing some reading on that, but I think ultimately what I've seen so far, it is down to that element of, well, I can stop this at any point. If this sound bothers me, I can stop it. But if someone else is doing it, then I can't. And and that becomes more of I have an element of control situation.
I suppose that relates to a lot of categories in mental health and the spectrum, because it's when things are in our control, it does feel better. It's like if you can control your mood swings, when you can control an episode of whether it be hallucination or of feeling guilty or of feeling depressed, like when you find the ability to control it, it's better than other people just telling you, no, you can't control that. That's just life. You get on with that. Like, as we were speaking before, for certain people, motivational quotes could just work for them. But for others, they may need a different source to their motivation. They may need a different type of support than just a say-so or a quote. Then, so that is interesting to put in the perspective of controlling the things that are ours. Like, because I love to control my sounds. Others, it's noise, it's distortion in a way,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you think about being in a restaurant, if you're in an overall kind of noisy restaurant and the noise just kind of blends into that background noise, it's not so bad. But if you're in a reasonably quiet restaurant and there's one table having a really raucous good time, and it's not your table. If it's not your table, it's like, well, these people just shut them. Whereas if it is your table, you get lost in that time, and it is such a bizarre thing. Like, I think in an actual restaurant where every table's being like that, you don't notice it or single it out or pick one people. If you're the people that are making the noise, you don't really tend to notice it so much. But when it is just one really obvious source of noise, it can be very jarring. And I think that's one of the things, actually, that point of view. I never really thought about this, but I think this is one of the extra things. Another one of those things that I'm quite grateful about bipolar disorder for, is because I'm two different people depending on where I am in that. Like, there's normal me. Well, I'm three different people, I suppose. There's normal me. Then manic me is will react to different things in different ways and sees everything as amazing. Like, I see myself as completely amazing and unstoppable. And anything, those motivational quotes would probably really pump me up when I'm manic and I'm bouncing off the walls. Whereas when I'm down here, then I hate myself and I hate everything. So it's and I think it's lucky for me to be able to empathize with people that I speak to, is because I have experienced both ends of that spectrum, and sometimes I've experienced both ends of that spectrum within the hour. so I think I'm quite fortunate in that, because I don't think I'd really be able to do my job if I didn't understand that. Different things can affect different people, or can affect you in a different day so much, and that's really helped with that. So in terms of your stream, what is the
So
what's the what's the idea of your stream? What are you hoping to help people with there? And because you do a lot of music creation on your stream.
yes, with my stream, well, recently I've been more hoping for going towards not just like creation and music production platform, but as well just podcast. Like, want to interview more people. Indie Couch is a multimedia company that not just deals with media in the sense of social platforms and content, but I want to deal with people. I want to be able to communicate and connect with people all around the world. So the podcast would be called Conversations Across the Nations, like, and finding out how these different cultures relate to creativities, how these different cultures relate to conditions, to how does mental health affect people in the UK versus Asia versus Africa versus America? You know, how does music vary from a country that's a small island versus I'm in a big city? You know, these different courses in our life. We're only on this small marble for so long. So if I can connect with as many people as possible, creativity and just a conversation. That's really what direction I want to go forward with.
How do you feel the two sort of very diverse parts of your heritage have impacted your musical or your creativity? Because I do notice that you occasionally drop into a few Scottish kind of bits and pieces.
I know, and like that's always like run me for a mill because my parents have always been like honest about that. Like, oh, you half my family is on the other side of the UK, and maybe a third or so is in the US, another in East Caribbean, and I just don't know that side of the world, and I wish I learned it more. So like now with music, I'm trying to find more people across the world just through the internet. I can send someone an email, they can collaborate on something within a day's time, within a week's time, if it's no rush, you know, and that ability has like given me some more insight to like, you know, how things go on that site, isn't it? You know, like like simple things like slang sometimes give people, it gives you ease. Knowing linguistics sometimes gives you ease and it gives you a better insight to culture and music. So the Caribbean rhythm and America's advanced technology has definitely boosted like audio engineering and hearing music abilities in a certain way. But knowing how the UK operates just definitely it definitely boosts me to want to be on the UK. Like I always told myself before I even have a concert in the US, not just live shows, little gigs and dive bars and things like that. Like I would definitely chart on the UK. That's the dream.
Awesome.
It's amazing over there how they respect and they treat artists to a certain extent. Things like I think it's the Edinburgh festival, for things like that, like to an extent, because you know everywhere has its fuckery.
It's funny because I suppose we see it as it being there being bigger things on your side of the pond, you know, like it's funny, like I suppose what you see within and we definitely see, I guess, bands and stuff being or musicians being supported and followed to a much kind of like higher level, but I suppose we only get like the romanticized version of it that's sent over from the US and stuff like that. But it is there's a lot of musical diversity over here. It's good to see, and yeah,
it is.
Wait a minute, I just completely lost my train of thought and looked at the chat at the same time. That does happen. But what I was going to ask was actually, what would you say then are kind of your main musical influences?
Main musical influences. Is there like a number?
Nah, you can like, like what would you say? What's is well? Would you be able to actually pick a most important? Like, what if there was one
Prince,
like
Prince, Prince,
Prince? Okay.
Nelson Rogers, Prince, Prince. He wasn't just a character or a gimmick. He was revolutionary in everything that he did. He beyond the curve and just ahead of the times, signs of the times. That is. So
Yeah.
Prince is definitely an influence. Besides that, like people like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, the Carters, Beyonce and Sean Carter, just business wise, just they're not just transcend pop, but R&B, hip hop, people like that. Besides that, more niche people like Leon LaHavis,
Oh yeah.
you know, like so it's a few more people. Been listening to more Megan Thee Stallion because I'm trying to get my fitness up. So, you know, you got to listen to hype.
You're trying to get TikTok viral.
You got to get your hype music in there.
Absolutely. If anyone, by the way, in the chat has got any questions, please do pop them in for us. I'm going to scroll up because there was a couple.
You said music taste, and I thought of people like Max Roach, Wes Montgomery. Please put me on some music. If you have any music that you feel like I should listen to, I'm always willing and open to listen to music and collect vinyls. Cough, cough. Thank you.
What am I, like I that's the problem is I used to absolutely love discovering music, but I don't really do much in the way of discovering music anymore. Like the avenues for that, like, so obviously I was really into I was really into music from a very, very young age, from I'd say from 6, like learning to play the piano at that age. And then I'd always kind of like find bands through, like, I remember using forums and stuff. So like you'd be on one particular band's forum and then the friends, like fans of that band, funnily enough, this would be classed as shameless self-promotion these days, but within a band's forum, there'd be like other people talking about, oh yeah, if you like this band, you'll also like these. And we actually, I suppose you'd not heard that phrase a million times in like the late 90s, early noughties. So at that point, you actually trusted people and you went and checked out that music because you were always trying to find new stuff. And really, my work, I suppose for me now, like there's this playlist called Chilled Afternoon on Spotify, and it's updated and I think it's curated pretty well. But there's nothing on there that I would ever say that. Well, actually, maybe one or two that you end up going, actually, I'll favorite this song. But there's literally nothing on there that I ever want to skip past, which is, so it's kind of like, it's always kind of got a good blend of just stuff that you can have on. It's inobtrusive. It's good to hang out with people and have conversation over. It's really good to have on in the car. But there's nothing in there that I could even say, oh, this artist is on there or whatever. Most of them are relatively unheard of artists. But that's kind of like my thing at the minute. And because it's updated quite regularly, it's well looked after, that playlist. Zombie Pig Boy followed up the question saying, is it mentally healthy to nurture a negative mindset with negative music? What are your thoughts on that?
To nurture a negative mindset with negative music, I will say yes, it is mentally healthy because everything is a spectrum, and I believe in energy. You cannot have positive energy without the negative. So if you are listening to something negatively and you're listening to something that may nurture anger in you, if you're listening to rage music, if you're listening to something that's just like, oh, I just want to tear something up, want to fuck this club up listening to the song, maybe just, go outside, take a breather, and just take a breath after that. You shouldn't nurture it per se, but I wouldn't say it's not healthy.
Yeah,
mental. It's a spectrum.
I think my community probably already know what I'm going to say on this, because I don't believe in negative or positive emotions. I believe in appropriate emotions. So what's the emotion appropriate for? Anger is an appropriate emotion if things have made you angry. We talked about this with Wreck-It Raven last week, and anger is an appropriate emotion in response to systemic racism. I think, it's like, I think that's fair to say. Being sad is an extremely appropriate emotion in a funeral. Being bouncing off the walls happy is not so appropriate in that situation. Like
not at
that.
all. That's
Yeah.
dark.
So yeah, yeah, absolutely, exactly. So
Who invited this guy?
well, she had a good life. It's like, oh yeah, she did. We can talk about that in 6 months, not today. But yeah. So in terms of what I'd say is, it's I want to pick into the wording in that question. Really, is it mentally healthy to nurture a negative mindset? It depends on whether you consider it to be a negative mindset. I would say, do you consider it to be an appropriate mindset, and also do you consider it to be a useful mindset to you? Is it useful? Like grief, being full on in with your grief is an extremely useful way to work through grief. Being like letting the anger run through and through, punching the crap out of a pillow, screaming into a pillow, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, is a very appropriate and useful thing to do. And kind of like as I said at the beginning of this, like I was frustrated from trying that Celeste speed run, but it gave me energy. It did give me energy, and then it's like, right, I'm going to redirect this energy now. That was useful. That frustration was kind of useful, because the frustration in a lot of ways does kind of amp you up. It's an elevated state.
Yeah.
So I would say it's like, is it mentally healthy? It's again, no one size fits all. And for some people, like I love belting out "I'm Not Okay" by My Chemical Romance when I'm not okay, because like it's like I'm totally mostly acknowledging the fact that I'm okay, but I'm screaming it at the top of my voice, and I love it. And if it's useful to you, then it's useful to you. It's not about, like, that's the thing with there's a lot of nuance within mental health. And that's the whole thing, is like it's if you get the effect from it that you want, then it's useful. That if someone was to give you an antidepressant or a mood booster or whatever they were to give you, that's only as useful as the effect that you get from it. And the same is true with music. If you get the effect that you want from that, if you get the effect that you want from an angry song, then it is good for you. If you don't get the effect, if you're not getting the effect, and if you find yourself actually, I feel even worse, and if you feel like it is nurturing a negative mindset, in fact that you actually feel, you feel even worse after that, then probably not. But yeah, I would say it's a very nuanced question, really.
True, because some music is made for that. I feel like a lot of music now, it's very emotional. It's ambient in a dark and ominous sort of way. So it's made for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we've got any more questions in there. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Hey, stay healthy, stay wealthy, take care of your mental health, and take care of yourself and your own table before you try to serve somebody else a plate. Because I feel like often with my mental health, I've given to others without making sure I have enough for myself.
Yep.
And that's hard for us. That's hard for us when we care for people, certain people. It's just hospitality. It may just be your humility, that generosity in you. So you feel guilty if you don't give, but make sure you take time for yourself. If anything, make sure you take that time for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Where are the best places for people to find out more about you?
You can find out more about me I am on twitch.tv/the Dr Beau, as it is written in the chat, and all my social links are on my Twitch page. You can find me there through Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all the etc. pages of music and streaming links.
Amazing. I do believe someone, like one of my mods, has just given you a shout out, which is probably playing. I can hear you twice because we've got the Twitch guru thing on that plays clips when you give shout outs. So there's
the world. We have 100.
Thank you for the follows. Thank you very much for the interview. I just know we're doing amazing things on this platform in general, and Twitch, and just opening up and being more vulnerable about mental health, because not a lot of people, sometimes you can't afford it, or sometimes you don't feel like you have the mental ability to even reach out and ask for the help.
Yeah.
So it's important having just spaces like this. People feel freely
Yeah, 100%, and that's why that's one of the big reasons for running this show is to highlight other spaces like this as well. My big motto is collaboration, not competition, because someone in your space or there's a couple of people that I think from my chat that you'd love to meet. One of them is Musical Moob Slap, who's just said he's followed. Musical Moob Slap is a musician, and I call it the big Moob energy. He's got a lot. He's one of the most energetic people I know. Beat Cleaver, I'm surprised isn't here. I don't think so. I've not seen his name pop up, but Beat Cleaver's amazing. I think you guys connected a few.
Yes.
Yeah. So especially if you I know you were looking at kind of doing more collaborative work as well. So that'd be really good, and that's one of the things I love to kind of use this community for. Really, is to connect people, with like-minded individuals, and people that might share the same values or might want to do similar projects and things like that. I think it's an honor to be able to do it, basically. But thank you immensely for joining me tonight. It's been really fun chatting with you, and getting to having a bit of a music conversation as well. It's been great.
Of course, I'm gonna have to redeem my points and get you to take out that guitar or something.
have you amassed 4,000 points already? I'm sure someone probably has, but yeah, awesome.
As soon as we started the interview, it's like sing mode, and I'm like, oh, what's this?
It gives you sing mode for 10 minutes or however long that it happens to go on for. It's not like we have a timer on for it or anything.